There's something about a Tuesday morning flight that makes you feel like you're sneaking out of your life. That was the thought spinning in my head as I sat windowside, staring down at the thin layer of clouds beneath us, pretending to read a magazine I'd flipped through twice already. Emily sat beside me, all smiles and travel energy, wearing that sunhat she hadn't touched in 5 years and a dress that might as well have come with a warning label. "You're gonna love this place," she said, placing her hand on mine. "We need this. God knows we need this." Yeah, we did. Or at least, I did. We'd been married 6 years, and the last 8 months had felt like a foggy rerun. Fewer laughs, less touch, more closed doors. She said work was wearing her out. I believed her. I wanted to. She booked everything: flights, resort, dinner reservations. I didn't even ask where we were going until we boarded the plane. "It's a surprise," she'd said with that playful lilt, the one I hadn't heard in too long. A surprise. I used to like surprises. Back when I thought they only came in gift boxes. We landed just before noon. A cab was waiting with a printed sign that read Mr. and Mrs. Hale. Emily waved like we were celebrities. The driver, a lean guy in mirrored sunglasses and a polo shirt too tight for his wiry frame, loaded our bags into the trunk. As we pulled away from the airport, he made polite conversation. Where we were from. How long we were staying. I told him I hadn't traveled in a while. He laughed and said, "Oh, your wife's been here before. She picked a great hotel." My heart stopped. "I'm sorry." "What?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. He tapped the GPS screen. "This resort. She booked it herself. Same one she stayed at before. Nice place. Romantic. Real private." Emily gave a tight smile. "I think he's confusing me with someone else," she said lightly. "Maybe," the driver chuckled. "Could be. Happens." The rest of the drive was a blur. I tried to push the thought down, but it was like swallowing gravel. The way she didn't even look at me. The way she stared out the window and bit the inside of her cheek, that thing she did when she was lying. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. The resort was breathtaking. White stone paths curved through manicured gardens, and the lobby smelled like citrus and confidence. As we checked in, the concierge smiled at Emily like she was an old friend. "Welcome back, Mrs. Hale." Her laugh was a shade too high. Must be a mix-up. My room key felt heavier than it should have. I followed her in silence down the hall, past couples kissing and tourists in straw hats taking selfies. When we reached our suite, she opened the door like it was just another vacation. But something was already broken. I just didn't know how deep the fracture went. Yet, the suite was impressive, too impressive for a weekend getaway. Polished floors, chilled champagne waiting on the table, petals on the bed like a movie set. I should have smiled. Should have kissed her. Should have said, "Thank you for doing this." Instead, I stood there, taking it all in like a crime scene. She spun around, arms wide. "Well, what do you think?" "It's nice." My voice came out flat, like I was reading the script of a stranger's life. Emily smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I wanted this to be special, Logan. Just you and me. No phones, no emails, no distractions." That line sounded rehearsed, like something she practiced in the mirror while I was out mowing the lawn. She slipped into the bathroom with her bag, calling out behind her, "Unpack if you want. I'll be out in a minute." I sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled through my nose. My hands itched to do something, anything, but instead, I just looked around. The closet door was ajar. Her suitcase was already half empty. She'd unpacked some things while I was tipping the cab driver. Odd. She always waited for me to help with her bags. I stood up and opened the closet wider. Dresses. Heels I hadn't seen in years. A gift bag from a local boutique with a receipt poking out, dated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. She told me she'd never been here. I tucked the receipt into my back pocket. The bathroom door opened with a hiss of steam. She walked out in a white robe, cheeks flushed, smile easy. "Want to hit the pool before dinner?" I looked at her and nodded. "Sure. Let me just grab something." I ducked into the bathroom, closed the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. The steam made everything look warped, like I was watching myself through someone else's eyes. I needed answers, but I couldn't ask. Not yet. If she was lying and it was looking more and more like she was, I wanted the full picture first. Back outside, I found her poolside with 2 drinks already sweating in the sun. "Just us now," she said, handing me one. But I knew better. Because in my pocket was a receipt from a trip I hadn't taken, but she had. She smiled again, and I smiled back. This trip wasn't a honeymoon reboot. It was a cover-up. We were halfway through the second day when the cracks stopped pretending to be cracks and just split wide open. It started simple, innocent even. I wanted to surprise her with breakfast. She was still asleep, curled up in the sheets like she didn't have a skeleton in the closet wearing her perfume. So I slipped out, took a walk, and decided to grab us something from the cafe down the hill. That's when I saw him. Same cab driver from yesterday, leaning against his car outside the hotel, like fate was waiting for me to ask the wrong question. I nodded. He nodded back. Beautiful day, he said. Sure is, I replied. Hey, quick question, about what you said yesterday. He tilted his head, smirking. About the hotel? Yeah, you said my wife had been here before. He looked a little sheepish. Oh, that. You know, I probably shouldn't have said anything. A lot of people come through here. Maybe I got her mixed up. Maybe. I didn't blink. But you said she picked this hotel herself. That she stayed here before. With someone. He hesitated. Then sighed. She booked it, yeah? Few months ago. Different guy. Tall. Always wore linen. Kinda smug, if I'm being honest. They were regulars for a bit. Same suite you're in now. My stomach turned. You're sure? He looked me in the eye. Same name on the booking. Mrs. Emily Hale. That name suddenly felt radioactive. I clenched my jaw, forcing my tone to stay even. And the guy? Dunno his name. But they tipped well. Always asked for privacy. Thing is, he paused, narrowing his eyes. They had a routine. Late dinners. Morning hikes. Afternoons in the room. Sometimes I'd pick up takeout for them. Other times, he shrugged. Didn't see them for hours. I felt like I was standing in someone else's shoes. Wearing someone else's wedding ring. Living someone else's life. Appreciate the honesty, I said quietly. He gave me a long look. I didn't mean to get you into anything, man. Thought you knew. I didn't answer. Just nodded and walked away, each step heavier than the last. When I got back to the suite, she was out of bed, tying her hair into a bun, humming like nothing existed outside the view from our balcony. There you are, she said brightly. What took you so long? I handed her the croissant bag and kissed her forehead like it didn't burn my lips. You ever hiked this place before? I asked casually. She smiled. Nope. First time here. And just like that, the lie became official. Now I knew. And now she didn't know that I knew. But she would. Oh, she would. The trick with betrayal is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like trying to ignore a crack in your windshield, drive long enough, and eventually it'll spread until the whole thing shatters. That's how I spent the rest of the day, with a smile plastered to my face and a fault line running down the middle of my chest. Emily was in full vacation mode. She wore that wide-brimmed hat, posed for pictures by the pool, giggled at things I wasn't even saying. I played along. I laughed when she laughed, held her hand, kissed her like a man not bleeding inside. Because now, I wasn't her husband on a getaway. I was an archaeologist, and I was here to dig. It started with her bag. While she was out at the resort spa, just a massage. Babe, be back in an hour. I got to work. I waited until the door clicked shut behind her. Then I walked straight to the suitcase. She kept her carry-on neat. Rolled shirts, makeup pouch, a leather travel journal with an embossed E. She'd had it since college. I picked the lock on it with a paperclip. Turns out YouTube tutorials really are good for something. Inside were a few loose receipts. One from a wine shop dated 2 weeks ago. One from a boutique hotel an hour outside of San Diego. The name on the receipt. Hale, Emily. The other line caught me harder. Guest name. Richard. I stared at that name. It didn't punch. It didn't scream. It just settled. A deadweight dropped into my gut. Richard. Of course. I'd heard the name before, once or twice, in passing. A guy from her department at work. Older. Ugh. Rich is so full of himself, she'd once said with a chuckle. But he's harmless. Harmless, my ass. I tucked the receipts back where I found them. Then I checked the safe. We hadn't used it. Not officially. But when I keyed in the default code, 1-2-3-4, because cliché never sleeps, it beeped, and the door creaked open like it was holding a secret just for me. Inside was a second phone. Not a burner. Not some old backup. This was a modern iPhone, cleaner than the one she used daily. No case. No stickers. No personality. Just cold steel and black glass. It was locked. But the universe, it seemed, was on my side today. Because I picked it up, and the Face ID activated. Then unlocked. She hadn't thought I'd find it. Hadn't figured I'd look. The home screen lit up. 3 unread texts. A banner popped up as I stared at it. Can't wait to see you again. You smell like cinnamon and trouble. Richard. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Opened the messages. There were dozens of them. No shame. No effort to hide anything. Some were emotional, some logistical. Plans to meet. Jokes only lovers share. Nicknames. Old pictures, nothing explicit, just intimate. A selfie of them in what looked like this exact suite. 3 weeks ago. She was in the same robe. He was kissing her cheek. The timestamp matched the receipt from the hotel shop. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone still glowing in my palm. I looked around the room. Same furniture. Same sheets. Same view. She brought me to the same place she brought him. Like I was just the next entry on her booking history. Like I wouldn't notice. She must have gotten too comfortable. Or maybe she thought I'd never look. Or maybe, just maybe, she wanted me to find out. Some part of her, too cowardly to admit it out loud, hoping the walls would do the dirty work for her. Well, message received. I put everything back where it was. Locked the safe. Zipped the bag. Checked the time. She'd be back in 15 minutes, tops. I went to the balcony and sat down. Let the breeze hit my face like a slap I refused to flinch at. When Emily returned, she kissed me on the head and said, "You should book a massage too. You look like you've been thinking too hard." I smiled. Yeah, maybe tomorrow. That night, we had dinner at the resort restaurant. White tablecloths, expensive wine, food that looked like art and tasted like credit card debt. She talked about retiring in Italy someday. I nodded and asked what she'd name our dog. She laughed, like everything was fine. Like we were in love. Like she wasn't handing her heart to another man in the same bed she'd offered to me. After dessert, she excused herself to the restroom. I sat alone at the table, sipping my wine, when the waiter stopped by. "Is everything to your liking, Mr. Hale?" "Fantastic. Thanks." He hesitated. "We hope your wife enjoyed her return visit." "It's always a pleasure having her." "Return?" I asked. He smiled. "Oh yes. She stayed here just a few weeks ago, didn't she?" I swirled the wine in my glass and chuckled. "She did." The waiter paused, as if sensing something just under my voice. But he nodded and left. I looked out over the pool, lit like glass under a pale moon, and smiled. Not the smile of a man in love. The smile of a man loading bullets into a plan. Because this wasn't the climax. This was intermission. And the final act? It was mine to write. They say knowledge is power. But power, when you're betrayed, isn't about screaming or breaking plates. It's not about rage, it's about patience. Silence is sharper than any outburst. So I spent that night holding a dagger behind my smile. After dinner, Emily suggested we take a walk by the water. Romantic. Serene. Exactly the kind of thing a guilty person does when they're trying to bury the evidence under a sunset. We strolled barefoot along the shore, the ocean licking at our feet, her hand in mine like we were newlyweds. She leaned on my shoulder and said, "This place feels like a new beginning." I nodded. It does. She couldn't see the irony-cutting lines across my face in the moonlight. Her new beginning was a rerun, starring me as the stand-in. By the time we got back to the room, she was glowing. Relaxed. Happy. That hurt more than anything. The next morning, I got up early and told her I was going to the resort gym. Truth was, I had a date with the front desk clerk. Now, I'm not a big believer in fate. But when I saw that same cab driver from before leaning against his car out front again, sipping coffee like he owned the joint, I took it as a sign. He spotted me and grinned. "Morning, Mr. Hale." I returned the nod. "You know, you've got impeccable timing." I try. Inside the lobby, I found my target, a young guy behind the desk, slick hair, name tag reading Nathan. He looked about 25, bored, and exactly the kind of employee who wouldn't ask too many questions if you offered the right kind of incentive. "Excuse me," I said, leaning on the counter. "Can I ask for some help?" "Of course, sir. I need to confirm a previous stay on this account. My wife handles all the travel, and I'm double-checking something for work reimbursement. Could you pull up any prior bookings under the name Emily Hale?" He raised an eyebrow, glanced around, and clicked away at the keyboard. After a moment, he squinted at the screen. "Yes, sir. Ms. Hale was here about, let me see, 23 days ago. Same room category. Suite 714. She checked in under the same name." I forced a chuckle. Of course she did. That woman never changes the reservation settings. Nathan smiled. "Would you like a printout of the receipt for reference?" I would. "Oh, and just out of curiosity, was she alone on that trip?" Nathan paused. "Let me check the guest profile." His brow furrowed. There was a second guest listed. A Mr. Richard West. Boom. I kept my face still. Of course. Thanks, Nathan. You've been a huge help. I slipped him a folded 20 across the desk. He tried to refuse, but I just patted the counter and walked away. Outside, I sat on a bench facing the ocean and stared out at the surf. The name buzzed in my skull like a hornet. Richard West. She didn't even bother changing his last name when she saved him in her secret phone. Either she didn't care if I found out, or she didn't think I had the spine to look. That's the part that stuck with me. She didn't think I'd look. When I got back to the suite, Emily was sitting on the balcony, sipping orange juice and journaling. She looked up and smiled. Hey, babe. Good workout. I nodded. Felt good to sweat some things out. We spent the morning lounging by the pool. I played the role, husband on vacation, mildly sunburned, completely unaware that his life had been hollowed out and rest-aged. When she went to grab us drinks, I pulled out the key card I'd lifted from the front desk. It was for room 714, her other suite. I told her I needed a break from the heat and slipped away. Up the elevator. Down the hall. Room 714 looked exactly like ours. Same layout. Same furniture. Except colder. Less lived in. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. It smelled faintly of cologne. Not mine. I checked the nightstands. One was empty. The other had a folded napkin tucked behind the drawer. I opened it, lipstick print in the center. A note written in scrawled cursive. Next time, no interruptions. E. I folded it, tucked it into my wallet. Then I took a deep breath and called the cab driver. He answered on the first ring. Yeah, it's Logan. You said you drove her before. Do you remember where they went when they stayed here? He paused. You sure you want to know? Tell me. There was a long silence. Then, they used to go to a small private beach on the other side of the island. Not a resort spot. Locals call it Mirror Bay. No tourists. No cameras. Just rocks and waves. Thanks. I hung up. By the time I got back to the pool, Emily was lounging with a drink, legs stretched out, eyes closed like she didn't have a guilty bone in her body. You look like you're on another planet, I said. She smiled without opening her eyes. Maybe I am. I smiled back. Want to go for a walk tonight? I heard there's a hidden beach nearby. Locals call it Mirror Bay. Her eyes snapped open. Right there. I saw it. The crack in her perfect world. Her fingers tensed around her glass. Her lips parted slightly, but she forced a smile. Sure. That sounds romantic. Yeah, I said. I thought so too. Tomorrow, we'd visit the scene of the crime. But tonight, I wanted her to feel the walls shift. The tension press inward. Because this wasn't just a vacation anymore. This was a countdown. And she had no idea what the final number would bring. She didn't say much on the ride there. Emily, my wife, the woman who once whispered plans for our future between sips of wine and forehead kisses, sat stiffly in the passenger seat of the rented Jeep, staring out at the trees like she was waiting for the right moment to vanish into them. The road to Mirror Bay was barely a road at all, more like a suggestion someone carved through palm trees and volcanic rock. Dust kicked up in the side mirrors, curling behind us like smoke. The resort had packed us a cute little picnic basket. 2 sandwiches. Sparkling water. A lie, neatly wrapped in a checkered cloth. She adjusted her sunglasses. How'd you hear about this place again? Taxi guy mentioned it. Said it's secluded. Peaceful. Thought you'd like it. A pause. Yeah. Sounds familiar. I kept driving. We reached the edge of the trail that led down to the beach and parked. I handed her the basket like a gentleman. She took it like it weighed more than guilt. The descent was quiet, just the crunch of sand, the wind slicing through the trees, and the occasional creak of her excuses shifting in her head. Mirror Bay revealed itself like a secret too proud to stay hidden. Rugged cliffs framed the cove, and the water sparkled as if it had nothing to hide. We laid the blanket down on the sand, same place the cab driver described. Flat rock to the left. A solitary tree to the right. Romantic if you didn't know what had happened here. I let her unpack the basket while I walked along the shore, pretending to admire the view. I needed her to think she was still in control, that I was still blind. She called out, You sure we won't get in trouble for being here? Place is public. No rules to break. I turned and smiled. Unless you broke one last time you were here. That got her. She blinked, froze, then laughed, but it came out brittle. What do you mean? I didn't answer. Just walked back, sat down beside her, and cracked open a bottle of water. This really is a good spot, I said. Feels like a movie set. Like something important's already happened here. Emily looked away, down at her hands. You okay? I asked. Yeah. She cleared her throat. Just thinking. About. She hesitated. Us. I nodded. Good. Because I've been thinking about us too. I reached into the tote bag I'd brought with me and pulled out a small item, wrapped in a bar napkin from the resort's lounge. I unwrapped it slowly, deliberately. Her second phone. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Found this in the room safe, I said, my tone flat as a weather report. Face ID worked. Guess you didn't think I'd go looking. Her lips parted slightly. The wind caught her hair, blew it across her cheek. She didn't brush it away. I know about Richard, I continued. I know this isn't your first time here. I know this wasn't about us reconnecting. It was about erasing a footprint. You just didn't think I'd notice the sand still wet. She blinked hard. Logan. I've got names. Receipts. Room numbers. Pictures. Do not insult me by playing dumb. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was loud. Screaming. Shattering. She finally spoke. It's not what you think. I almost laughed. That line again. She shifted on the blanket. He meant nothing. I thought it was over. I swear, I haven't spoken to him since I booked this trip. I didn't think. Exactly, I cut in. You didn't think. She looked away. I was lonely. You were always working. I felt invisible. You felt invisible, so you let someone else undress you in the same room where we celebrated our 3rd anniversary? Her eyes snapped to mine. I didn't flinch. You brought me here, I said. To the same suite. Same bed. Same beach. Were you testing me? Trying to get caught? No, she whispered. I was trying to forget. Well, congratulations. I'll never forget this place now. She reached for the phone, maybe to toss it into the ocean, maybe just to feel something solid. I pulled it away. Not yet, I said. We're not done. Her shoulders slumped. What do you want from me? I paused, looked out at the ocean, then back at her. I want you to answer one question. Okay. I leaned in. Why did you bring me here? Emily. Not just the island. This place. This exact beach. She blinked. I thought, if I could replace the memory, maybe I could kill the guilt. Maybe if I shared this place with you, it wouldn't feel like a betrayal anymore. And does it? She hesitated. I don't know. It feels like both. That was the most honest thing she'd said all week. I stood and brushed sand from my jeans. I'm heading back, I said. You stay. Watch the waves. Think real hard about the fact that I know everything now. She stood too, mouth trembling. Logan, wait, please. We can fix this. I shook my head. No. You can't fix something you intentionally broke. You can tape the pieces together, sure. But you'll always see the cracks. And I've spent enough years trying not to. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. Enjoy the view, I said. One of us should. Then I turned and walked up the trail, the wind at my back and her voice chasing me like a broken promise that I didn't go back to the resort. Not right away. Instead, I walked to a little internet cafe near the harbor where no one knew my name and the Wi-Fi worked just well enough. I sipped a warm Coke and opened a private cloud folder on my phone, something I'd started filling the day I first saw Richard's name in our phone records. Inside were photos, screenshots, call logs, even a short video from the room safe when her secret phone lit up with his message. You smell like cinnamon and trouble. I uploaded it all. Then I sent one single email to myself. Subject line, just in case. Then I sent a second, to Richard's company email, and a third to her HR department. See, Richard wasn't just some guy she fell for. He was her supervisor, the one who signed off on her travel, booked hotels with the company card, a manager caught on the clock. She thought she was risking her marriage. She didn't realize she was risking her job, too. Call me petty. I call it symmetry. She was packing when I got back. We were supposed to fly out the next morning, but the tension in the room could have torn a sailboat in half. Emily sat on the bed, suitcase open, clothes folded with the precision of someone trying to distract themselves from drowning. I assume you're leaving early? I asked. She nodded, eyes down. Yes. I changed my flight, I said. Took the later one. Figured we could spare the passengers the in-flight tension. She glanced at me. You're really done, aren't you? I shrugged. You walked me into the inn like it was a honeymoon. At least let me walk myself out with some dignity. She looked away. It wasn't supposed to go like this. No, I said. It wasn't. But then again, you weren't supposed to have a second phone either. I set it on the table. The files are backed up. If either of you tries anything funny, I'll make sure every boardroom you've ever stepped into knows what went down at Mirror Bay. Her voice cracked. That's blackmail. No, I corrected. That's leverage. She stared at the floor. Do the kids know? We don't have kids, Emily. A long pause. Then what's left? I looked her in the eyes. Me. The taxi back to the airport wasn't the same one from before. New driver. Younger guy. Friendly. Asked if I was traveling for business or pleasure. I smiled. Just cleaning house. The island disappeared in the rearview mirror. I didn't look back. At the airport, I watched her from 2 gates away as she boarded her flight. She kept checking her phone, probably wondering if the storm I'd started had landed yet. It had. When I finally got home, I didn't unpack. I didn't sleep. I sat down at my desk, opened a blank document, and typed out the only sentence that felt true. I didn't lose her. She just revealed herself. Then I called my lawyer. Told him I wanted a clean split. No haggling. No arguments. But under no circumstances was she walking away with the house. Because she might have broken the vows. But she wasn't going to break my spine on the way out. Here's the thing about revenge. People expect it to be a spectacle. Fireworks. Screaming. Theatrical collapse. But sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is just peace. She lost the job. Richard was reassigned. I got the house, the car, and a silence so pure you could hear her lawyer swallow through the phone when the evidence hit their inbox. I never raised my voice. Never made a scene. And no, I didn't hit anyone. I didn't need to. The truth did all the hitting for me. A month later, I was standing in my kitchen, barefoot, flipping pancakes and listening to the radio when I got the final text from her. You really destroyed everything. I stared at it for a second. Then I deleted it. No response. No explanation. No parting words. Because she was wrong. She destroyed it. I just cleaned up the mess, like I always did.